If you've ever spotted a home with perfect symmetry, shutters and a central front door, there was a good chance you're looking at a Colonial Revival. But what exactly makes a home Colonial Revival, and how is it different from all the other colonial iteration architectural styles? Well, in today's episode, we're going to break that down, starting with the historical inspiration, moving on to the exterior and interior identifying features, and wrapping up with the legacy of the Colonial Revival and how it shapes so many of our neighbourhoods, even today. The Colonial Revival draws its inspiration from two influential 18th century architectural traditions. The first was the Georgian Colonial, known for its rigid symmetry, its multi-pane sash windows, and its classical details like pilasters and columns. And the second was the Federal Colonial, which was a slightly later evolution of the style, and it softened the look with elliptical fanlights, delicate ornamentation, and a more refined sense of scale. Colonial Revival architects didn't just replicate either of these styles. Moreover, they cherry-picked the most recognisable and flattering elements from both, streamlining them into a cleaner, more idealised version that felt traditional yet modernised. And the result was a new hybrid that honoured early American tradition while making it more accessible and desirable for 20th century families. The style really took off from 1910 to around 1940, fueled by a wave of patriotism, nostalgia, and a growing middle class that craved homes with a sense of stability, tradition, as well as refinement. After the chaos of World War I and in the decades leading up to the Great Depression and World War II, Americans found great comfort in architectural styles that symbolised endurance and national identity. And thanks to pattern books and mass-produced building materials, builders could replicate this signature look affordably across growing suburbs. Even today, its influence is everywhere, from mid-century subdivisions to newly built homes that echo the same balanced facade, shuttered windows, and classic entry that defined the movement over a century ago. The first exterior identifying feature of the Colonial Revival is, of course, the symmetry. It's that perfectly balanced front elevation with an equal number of windows either side of the perfectly centred front door, and usually 5 windows on the upper level. This echoes the strict formality of the Georgian architecture and immediately distinguishes it from the more casual or asymmetrical designs such as the Craftsman or the Victorian. Next up is the grand centred front door, and it's usually framed with classical details such as a pediment or a tablature supported by the pilasters or columns. Now, just as an aside, I just wanted to clarify between the two because people often get confused. So pilasters are flattened decorative elements that mimic the look of columns, but they are attached to the wall surface. You'll often see them as well either side of a fireplace attached to the wall, whereas columns are freestanding and three-dimensional. So coming back to these architectural touches, they give the entrance a real sense of grandeur. Multi-pane sidelights and fanlights, which were borrowed from the Federal architectural style, add further elegance and lend a real formal, dignified presence. Exterior feature number 3 are the double hung windows with shutters. Now, these windows are almost always double hung, or double sash means the same thing, and arranged symmetrically across the facade. And they are frequently paired with non-operational shutters, which serve a kind of a decorative nod to early colonial architecture. Now, even though these shutters do not open and close on a daily basis, you'll frequently see what's called a shutter dog, which is a S-shaped kind of hardware mounted below each individual shutter to give the impression that they're being held back, which is just another touch of historical charm. The fourth feature are the exterior materials the Colonial Revivals are made from, because although across the country they share a consistent design theme, the exterior siding varies according to climate and region, just like with the 17th and 18th century original colonials. So in the northeast, where the weather is harsh, brick is commonly used for its durability and thermal mass, whereas in the south, where there's heat and humidity, siding and clapboard is more common. So these material choices reflect practical adaptations layered over traditional aesthetics. From the outside, Colonial Revival homes project a sense of balance, tradition, and timeless elegance. But that design philosophy continues indoors as well. Step inside and you'll often find a layout and detailing that mirror the same classical influences, orderly, symmetrical, and rooted in early American tradition. So let's have a look at some of the key defining interior features of a Colonial Revival. First up is the centre hall floor plan with rooms arranged symmetrically, of course. This is a colonial on either side. This layout is a direct reference to the Georgian colonial homes, which reinforces the style's sense of balance and formality. In larger homes, the hallway may have featured arched doorways, transom windows, and decorative niches, all of which emphasise the home's classical roots. Interior feature number 2 were the fireplaces, which were the visual anchors of the main living space. They often featured traditional mantels, sometimes flanked by built-in shelving on either side. Now, these very formal fireplaces were meant to convey stability, warmth, both literal as well as figurative, as well as a sense of timeless elegance. Next up is the classical woodwork and trim, and you'll commonly find refined architectural details throughout, including crown moulding, chair rails, and wainscoting. These trim elements add visual depth and interest to what would otherwise be pretty plain and simple walls, and they also reflect the Colonial Revival emphasis on craftsmanship and classical detailing. It's most commonly found in the more formal rooms, such as the formal dining room, the entry hall, as well as the formal living room, where it reinforces the home's sense of tradition, elegance, and hierarchy of space. And finally, the fourth interior feature were the staircases, which were a nod to the craftsmanship displayed in the original colonials of the 17th and 18th century. And while they weren't overly ornate, these staircases were intentionally formal and helped set the tone for the home's classic and symmetrical aesthetic. In modern Colonial Revival interpretations, traditional forms are preserved but updated with sleeker materials such as iron balusters and darker stained wood, blending contemporary tastes with timeless appeal of the style. Colonial Revival has proven to be one of the most influential and enduring residential styles in American architecture. From the early 20th century through to the post-Second World War building boom, it became the default choice for middle and upper class neighbourhoods, symbolising tradition, order, and national pride. Its appeal lay in its ability to evoke historical ideals while adapting to modern needs. One reason that the style remains so widespread and actually difficult to identify clearly is because it draws from multiple colonial era influences. So depending on the time period, you may see elements from Georgian, federal, even Dutch colonial all blended into one house. So this kind of hybrid architectural style means no two Colonial Revivals are ever exactly alike, but they all share a common thread of symmetry, tradition, and classical restraint. Even today, new builds continue to echo Colonial Revival traditions with balanced facades, classical door surrounds, and trim details because the style feels familiar as well as timeless. It bridges past and present, offering a sense of permanence and refinement that resonates with generations of buyers. Colonial Revival remains a touchstone of American architecture, quietly dignified and endlessly adaptable. Thanks for watching this breakdown of Colonial Revival architecture. And if you've ever struggled to tell it apart from the true colonial homes, now you know why. It's part history and part reinvention. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. It really helps me out. And I'll post some videos here of the Georgian, the Federal, and the Dutch colonial architectural styles. And I'll see you next week.